In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
When Zarathustra was 30 years old, he left his home and the lake of his home, and he went into the mountains where he enjoyed his spirit and his solitude, and for 10 years did not tire of it. But at last a change came over his heart, and one morning he rose with the dawn and stepped before the sun and spoke to it thus. You great star, what would your happiness be had you not for those whom you shine? For 10 years you have climbed into my cave, and you would have tired of your light and of your journey had it not been for me and my eagle and my serpent. It's going to be important later. But we waited for you every morning and took your overflow from you and blessed you for it. And behold, I am weary of my wisdom. Like a bee that has gathered much honey, I need hands outstretched to receive it. I would give away and distribute until the wise among men find joy once again in their folly, and the poor in their riches. For that I must descend to the depths as you do in the evening, when you go behind the sea and still bring light to the underworld. You are an overrich star. Like you, I must go under. I must go down, and it is said by man to whom I want to descend. So bless me then, you quiet eye that can look even upon an all too great happiness without envy, and bless the cup that wants to overflow, and the water may flow from it golden and carry everywhere to the reflection of your delight. And behold, this cup wants to become empty again, and Zarathustra wants to become man again. Thus Zarathustra began to go under. Obviously, this cold open, this whole episode is going to be about Thus Spoke Zarathustra from Nietzsche.
The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Doing this live. Fuck it. We're doing it live. I've never done a live episode quite like this before, so this is interesting. And then what compounds the problem is I have a wild echo in my headset. So when I have an echo, I notice that I tend to start speaking slower to keep track of the echo. So I'm trying to work around it. So if I sound like I'm drunker or like I'm having an aneurysm, it's just because of this echo problem. So I've been fucking around. First of all, I've had a fucking shitty day. I've had an awful day. And all I wanted to do was hang out. And talk some shit. You can do some recording. And then I remember that I had this Spreaker studio thing that could go live, and I was like, well, that might be fun. It has like a chat feature on it. I'm not sure. Anyhow, So we're trying this out. So I've read this the Spake Zarathustra a couple times. I did it on a couple live streams and stuff when I was on trying to do Facebook stuff. And so I just thought I would just grab it and just pour a drink and just try to decompress and hang out. However, I just started and I'm almost out of my drink. It took me a while to get my audio bits and stuff lined up, so I might have to take a few more breaks than normal. But we're going to get through a lot of this stuff if you guys are interested. And because I'm going through this web app instead of my sweet-ass soundboard, I might sound a little bit different. And I'm hoping this echo is not carrying over to the recording thing. So who knows? This might not even get uploaded. I might not even keep this. I just don't know. It's a big experiment, and I'm without a net right now. My net's gone. So we're reading the introduction to the Spake Zarathustra, and yeah, I love it. I love the story. So let's just get right back into it. Like I said, I don't care. I don't feel like fucking around. So where were we? We left Zarathustra is like Jane's addiction. He's coming down the mountain. Coming down the mountain. Unlike most Generation Xers, coming down the mountain is the only fucking Jane's Addiction song that I like. I could tolerate the one, been caught stealing with the dog bass line and stuff, but Coming Down the Mountain is really the only one that I give a fuck about. Ironically, I'm also not a giant Nirvana fan. I was once on a bus working night shift, coming home on a bus, and there was this drunk dude on the bus, and he was like, he was reading a book that he just got from the library, and it was all about Kurt Cobain, and he was like, Kurt Cobain, he was an older dude, but he was drunk, and he was reading this Kurt Cobain book, and I have this thing where if I'm in a situation where I can't get out of, the worst people will find me and start trying to talk to me. Anyhow, this guy starts to explain to me how Kurt Cobain was the voice of my generation. Much like, Jim Morrison was the voice of this guy's generation, I guess. And I was just like, look, man, I don't agree. Magnanimous. Even magnanimous. Alright, so here comes Zarathustra. He descended alone from the mountain, encountering no one. And when he came into the forest, all at once there he stood before him an old man, who has left his holy cottage to look for roots in the woods, and thus spoke the old man to Zarathustra. No stranger to me is this wanderer. It's all fascinating. Many years ago he passed this way, and Zarathustra he was called, but he has changed. At this time you carried your ashes to the mountains. Now you would carry your fire into the valleys. Do you not fear to be punished as an arsonist? Yes, I recognize Zarathustra. His eyes are pure. And around his mouth here hides no disgust. But he does not walk. Does he not walk like a dancer? So this thing that he's doing, this dancer, this wizard, this forest wizard's talking to this thing, and he's like, does he not walk like a dancer? So obviously, the Spake Zarathustra has been around for a while, and has been through a couple of different translations. So this dancer business, we're going to find out later. We're going to link it to this, in some translations it's called a rope dancer. In some translations it's called a tightrope walker. And I think the tightrope walker is more accurate. I don't know. I'm just discovering buttons. I'm like, I don't know if I should punch it. I don't know. Okay. So here we're already tying Zarathustra to this tightrope walker that we're going to find later. Zarathustra has changed, and Zarathustra has become a child, and Zarathustra has awakened one. What do you now want among the sleepers? You lived in your solitude as in the sea, and the sea carried you, alas. Would you now climb ashore? Alas, would you again drag your own body? And here he's tying something into something that's going to happen at the end of this first part of the Spake Zarathustra. We're probably not going to get to it tonight because I've realized that I'm going to be interjecting a lot. But at the end of this first part, so the Spake Zarathustra is like, the first part of it is a story. And then it breaks down to like sermons in the second and third part. So this wizard setting up this idea, I call him a forest wizard. He's just an old dude that lives in the forest, I guess, Yoda or something. The Tolkien wizard who Radagast the Brown or something like this. But he's setting up a lot of business. He's foreseeing the future with Zarathustra carrying this dead body around. It's going to wind up happening literally later. But more importantly, he's kind of setting the stage for this idea. Nietzsche has this idea of eternal occurrence and reoccurrence. And it's this thought experiment. And what it's supposed to do, this thought experiment is you're supposed to understand that everything that you're doing, like I'm sitting here in my studio talking to you, even though it's different because I'm talking to you through this web-based thing live right now, it's different because I'm talking to you through this web-based live thing right now. It's different, but it's the same because I sit down here and talk to you guys all the time. The idea, so the reason I got turned on to this is the idea, or not the idea, but in True Detective, the first season, the really, really good season, Rushton Cole he thinks he's arresting this guy, this human trafficker, rapist, douchebag, and he's got him down on his knees, and he just like totally outsmarted this guy to get him, and he's got his gun to his head and stuff, and he's just like, this guy just starts spouting out stuff, and he goes, "Time is a flat circle," and Russ looks at him, and he goes, "What is that? Nietzsche?" He's like, "What is that, Nietzsche, you fucking asshole?" Or whatever. And so the whole idea that time is a flat circle, and then if you watch that True Detective over and over again, it's all about like round tables and record players flipping records out. Time is of plates, time is a flat circle. So I was like, what does this mean? And the showrunner for True Detective does not let that go, because in the last season, it's literally this guy is just retracing his steps over and over again in like 3 different parts of his life or something. Like it's literally time is a flat circle, and everything that you've done, you've done before, and you're going to do again. It's a kind of a Gnostic idea. So when I veer wildly off on the recorded shows, this is when I can kind of pause the machine and figure out where I left off. Oh boy, here we go. Okay, I'm just going to jump back in because I'm not sure. Oh, the rope dancer business. It seems like 5 years ago. Zarathustra has changed, and Zarathustra... Oh, I already did that part. Zarathustra answers. So this guy is like saying, "You're changed. You're trying to wake up these sleepers. They don't want to be woken up. What are you doing? You're going to climb ashore. You're going to start dragging around your own body." And Zarathustra answers that, "I love man. Why? Asked the forest wizard. Did I go into the forest and into the desert? Was it not because I loved man all too much? Now I love God, and man I love not. Man is for me too imperfect a thing. Love of man would kill me. Zarathustra answered, did I speak of love? I bring men a gift. So he's not saying that he loves men, but he's like, I have attained awesomeness, and I descend back into the realm of men to teach them. And the wizard says, give them nothing. Rather, take part of their load and help them to bear it. That will be the rest for them. If only it does you good, but if you want to give them something, give them more than alms and let them beg for that. And Zarathustra's like, no, bro. He answers, no. I give no alms, for that I am not poor enough. The saint forest wizard laughs at Zarathustra, and he spoke with us. Then see to it that they accept your treasures. They are suspicious of hermits, and do not believe that we come with gifts. Our steps sound too lonely through the streets, and that if at night their beds they hear a man walk by long before the sun has risen, they probably ask themselves, where is this thief going? And do not give to man, and stay in the forest, rather than even to the animals. And why do you not want to be as I am, a bear among bear, and a bird amongst birds? And what is the saint doing in the forest? Asked Zarathustra. And he's like, what do you do? How are you so wise? Old man. And the saint or the wizard, the forest wizard answers, I make songs and I sing them. And when I make songs, I laugh and I cry and I hum. And thus I praise God with singing, crying, and laughing and humming. I praise the God who is my God. And what do you bring us as a gift? And when Zarathustra had heard these words, he bade the saint farewell and said, what could I have to give to you? But let me go quickly, lest I take something from you. And thus they separated, the old man laughing as two boys laugh. And when Zarathustra was alone, he spoke thus to his heart. And he said, could it be possible the old wizard in the forest has not yet heard anything of this? That God is dead.
What evil lurks in the hearts of men. The shadow knows.
Blue Coal presents The Shadow, a man of mystery who strikes terror in the very souls of sharpsters, lawbreakers, and criminals. All signs point to a severe winter. Be prepared. If you want to be sure of even, dependable, healthful heat in any kind of weather, insist on Blue Coal, America's finest anthracite mined from the fields of northern Pennsylvania. The coal that is colored a harmless blue at the mine for your protection.
You can't have me to the gate. You can't do it. Let me out of here. Let me.
Oh, Gordon, listen.
Huh? I can't see anybody. Who's that?
I am the shadow. Stop. We haven't much time. We must hurry, Gordon. You're in the death house, charged with murder.
Yes, I'm innocent. I'm innocent. But nobody knows it.
Take courage, Gordon. The shadow knows.
All right, Margot, won't you sit down? I told Albo to serve our coffee here in the library. I should rather go on the terrace.
No, I prefer it here.
Then let me see you smile. That frown is most unbecoming.
Lamont, give it up.
Give what up, my dear? Drinking coffee?
I'm serious, Lamont Cranston. When I foolishly let you know that... Do you remember what you said? It will be exactly 5 years next week.
But there's still so much to do, Margot.
Well, then let
Lamont
somebody else
Cranston,
do it.
that
Don't you realize that you can't
motherfucker.
go like this forever?
All right, sorry about that. I mentioned that my drink got empty too soon, so I just had to take a quick hike. All right, so Zarathustra had just reminded us, or he just marveled at the fact that the forest wizard had no idea that God was dead. When Zarathustra came into the next town, which lies on the edge of the forest, he found many people gathered together in the marketplace, for it had been promised that there would be a tightrope walker, or like I mentioned before in some translations, it was a rope dancer. Oh! So, I forgot to mention when I went and got my new drink, I was out of gin, bros, so I actually had to mix up. Alright, so I'm like distantly related to Captain Morgan, and I often get bottles of Captain Morgan as gifts, and I'm not a rum drinker, but since I'm out of the groovy clear, I had to mix up a rum and diet soda. And because it's just like this theory of occurrence and reoccurrence, it's all the same, but it's just slightly different. You know, you just grab the mason jar and you hoist it, you know, to your lips or whatever, and you expect one thing and you get the other. Even though I just filled it, I mean, you're just fighting muscle memory and reflexes, and your expectations. You settle down. You're comfortable with the world. It's an illustration. You see, it's a sad state of affairs. Alright, this tightrope walker. So this is the illusion, thematic illusion, to Zarathustra acting as a dancer earlier before he was pulling around his body. Because we're going to see both of these things happening coming up. He came into the next town. Tightrope walker. And Zarathustra... Okay, so imagine this. So the way that I envision this is that there's like a carnival in downtown, and between two buildings there's stretched a tightrope, and everybody's gathered to watch this tightrope walker. And Zarathustra, you know, who's lived on this mountain for 30 years or what the fuck ever, shows up and he's like, alright, look man, this is great. I got all the people of the town standing right here. So, I just have to start preaching to them. So he starts preaching and yelling to them. And he says, so think about it this way. Like the whole town is there waiting to watch this tightrope walker, and this old dude shows up. I don't even know how old. But he shows up and he's like, I teach you the overman. Man is something that shall be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? All beings so far have created something beyond themselves, and do you want to go back to the ebb of this great flood, and even go back to the beasts rather than overcome man. What is the ape to a man? A laughingstock or a painful embarrassment. And a man shall be just that for the overman, a laughingstock or a painful embarrassment. You have made your way from worm to man. This is a Marilyn Manson. So the best album of the 1990s was this Marilyn Manson album called Antichrist Superstar, where he actually, there's a whole song about this. A worm to a man. And much in you is still worm. Once you were apes, and even now, too, man is more ape than an ape. Whoever is the wisest among you is also a mere conflict and cross between plant and ghost. But do I bid you to become a ghost, or to become plants? Behold, I teach you the overman. Imagine this guy yelling this stuff at a gathered group of people who are just trying to watch a tightrope walker. The overman is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say, the overman shall be the meaning of the earth. I bespeech you, my brothers, remain faithful to the earth. And do not believe those who speak to you of otherworldly hopes. Poison mixers are they. Whether they know it or not, and despisers of life are they. Decaying their poisoned themselves, of whom the earth is weary, and let them go. Once the sin against God was the greatest sin, but now God died, and these sinners died with him. To sin against the earth is now the most dreadful thing, and to esteem the entrails of the unknowable higher than the meaning of the earth. Once the soul looked contemptuously upon the body, and then the contempt was the highest, and she wanted the body meager, ghastly, and starved, and thus she hoped to escape it, and the earth. Oh, this soul herself was still meager, ghastly, and starved, and the cruelty was the lust of this soul. But you too, my brothers, tell me, what does your body proclaim of your soul? It is not your soul, poverty and filth, that wretched contentment. This is all very interesting because I know how this particular story ends, and it ends with Zarathustra dragging a physical body around with him. So I had not even really made that thing until I started reading this. The thematic business at the beginning, you know. Verily, a polluted stream is man, and one must be a sea to be able to receive a polluted stream without becoming unclean. And behold, I teach you the overman. He is the sea. In him your great contempt can go under. What is the greatest experience you can have? It is the hour of the great contempt, and the hour in which your happiness too arouses your disgust, and even your reason and your virtue. Sorry. The hour when you say, what matters my happiness? It is poverty and filth and wretched contentment, but my happiness ought to justify existence itself. The hour when you say, what makes my reason? Oh, this is too sweet. Does it crave knowledge? As the lion his food, is it poverty and filth and wretched contentment? The hour when you say, what matters my virtue. As yet it has not made me rage, and I weary. I am of my good and my evil. All that is poverty and filth and all wretched contentment. This is, it seems like it's one of these shadow self, dealing with your shadow self businesses. The hour when you say, what matters my justice? I do not see that I am flames and fuel, but the just are flames and fuel. The hour when you say, what matters my pity? It is pity, the cross on which he is nailed, who loves man, but my pity is no crucifixion. Yet you have spoken thus. Have you yet cried thus, motherfuckers? Oh, that I might have heard you cry thus, bitch. Not your sin, but your thrift cries to heaven. Your meanness, even your sin, cries to heaven. There is lightning to lick you with its tongue. Where is the frenzy in which you should be inoculated? It's heavy metal. Behold, I teach you the overman, and he is the lightning. He is this frenzy, and when Zarathustra had spoken thus, one of the people cried, now we have heard enough about the tightrope walker. Let us see him too. And all the people laughed at Zarathustra, but the tightrope walker, believing that the word concerned him, began his performance. So Zarathustra is out there heckling this crowd. Oh, sorry about that. And the crowd thinks that he's part of the show. And so they're like, they start heckling him back. And the tightrope walker is up there like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. So they're rejecting. I'm listening to my headphones, can you tell? I sort of sound like I'm having an aneurysm. So the crowd is rejecting Zarathustra's message, and they're starting to mock him. And yeah, I'm just gonna do one of these right now. I gotta regain my shit.
Learn more at theabracast.com. Get graphic elements, notes, worksheets, and text versions of selected episodes, as well as access to the private Abracast workgroup by signing into the mailing list. Get all that, plus exclusive episodes, by supporting the show and becoming a subscriber at subscribestar.com.
For Zarathustra, however, beheld the people and was amazed. Then he was like, "What do you fucking mean? You were laughing at me? No, bitch, I'm laughing at you." He beheld the people and was amazed, and he spoke thus. This is probably one of the greatest parts. Man is a rope tied between beast and overman. And a rope over an abyss, a dangerous across, a dangerous on the way, and a dangerous looking back, and a dangerous shuddering and stopping. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end. He cannot be loved in man is that he is an overture and a going under. Remember, this is how he described his trip down the mountain, because this is how he had his dialogue with the sun. the son, he was like, you have to go under. And Zarathustra was like, I have to come down off this mountain. And he's saying that this is what is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end. What can be loved in man is that he is an overture into going under. I love those who do not know how to live except by going under, for they are those who cross over. I love the great despisers because they are the great reverers and arrows of longing and for the other shore. I love those who do not first seek behind the stars for a reason to go under and to be a sacrifice, but who sacrifice themselves for the earth, and the earth may someday become the overman's. I love him who lives to know, another Gnostic idea, and who wants to know so that the overman may live someday, and thus he wants to go under. And I love him who works and invents to build a house for the overman, and to prepare earth, animal, and plant for him, for thus he wants to go under. And I love him who loves his virtue, for virtue is the will to go under, and the arrow of longing. And I love him who does not hold back one drop of spirit for himself, but wants to be entirely the spirit of his virtue. Thus he strides over the bridge as spirit. And I love him who makes his virtue an addiction and his catastrophe, much like this podcast. For his virtue's sake, and he wants to live on and to live no longer. I love him who does not want to have too many virtues, because one virtue is more virtue than two, because it is more of a noose on which the catastrophe may hang. I love him whose soul squanders itself and who wants no thanks and returns none. For he always gives away and does not want to preserve himself. And I love him who is abashed when the dices fall to make his fortune, and he asks himself, Am I then a crooked gambler? For he wants to perish. And I love him who casts golden words before his deeds, and always does even more than he promises, for he wants to go under. I love him who justifies future and redeems past generations, for he wants to perish of the present. And I love him who chastens his God because he loves his God, for he must perish of the wrath of his God. And I love him whose soul is deep even in the beginning, or even in being wounded, and who can perish of a small experience. Thus he goes gladly over the bridge. And I love him whose soul is over full, so that he forgets himself, and all things are in him, and thus all things spell his going under. I love him who has free spirit and a free heart. Thus his head is the entrails of his heart, but his heart drives him to go under. I love those who are as heavy drops falling one by one out of the dark cloud that hangs over men. They herald the advent of lightning, and as heralds they perish. Behold, I am a herald of the lightning, and a heavy drop from the cloud. But this lightning is called Overman. I'm going to drink to that one. When Zarathustra had spoken these words, he beheld the people again. Remember, he's yelling at a group of people that are there to watch a carnival act. And he spoke these words, and he was just like, all right now, bitches, what do you think? The people again, and was silent, and there they stand, he said to his heart, and there they laugh. They do not understand me. I am not the mouth for these ears. Must one smash their ears before they learn to listen with their eyes? Must one clatter like kettle drums and preachers of repentance? Or do they believe only in a stammerer? They have something of which they are proud. What do they call the man? Sorry, what do they call that which makes them proud? Education, they call it, to distinguish them from the goat herders. So this is funny because I am drawing parallels to between this and earlier in the episode when he was talking about how people, they don't worship God anymore. They worship the earth. I'm like, he's talking about leftists. This is why they do not like to hear the word contempt applied to them. Again, let them address their pride. Again, let them speak to them that which is most contemptible. But that is the last man. And thus spoke Zarathustra to the people. Let time has come for man to set himself a goal. The time has come for man to plant the seed of the highest hope. His soil is still rich enough, but one day this soil will be poor and domesticated, and no tall tree will be able to grow in it. Alas, the time is coming when man will no longer shoot the arrow of his longing beyond. Man and the string of his bow will have forgotten how to whirl. I say unto you, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. Again, they're linking this dancing to this tightrope walking, to the dancing of Zarathustra, or the body of the dancer of Zarathustra at the beginning. Give birth to a star. This is also interesting because it links into kind of links into Thelema. So Crowley, he had this thing where he would just like gather a bunch of stuff together and kind of like lash it together to make it kind of work or whatever. But one of the things he did is he claimed that Nietzsche was a prophet of Thelema. He was like this guy, he's like maybe kind of like John the Baptist. Like he showed up before I did to prepare the world for Thelema, for me. Well, I'm not going to speak to the validity of that. I'm going to say it's understandable. Like you're reading these things and you see these Thelemic ideas in there. And like, you're like, what's Thelema or whatever? Just go to the feature topic link of the website and hit up there's two Thelema. Currently, there's two Thelema categories going on. And also, pay attention to the end of this episode. Where was I? The star. Yeah. Okay. The earth has become small, and on its hops the last man who makes everything small. His race is as ineradicable as the flea beetle. The last man lives the longest, and we have invented happiness, says the last men. And they blink. They have left the regions, and they blink. That's funny. And they left the regions where it was hard to live, for one needs warmth. One still loves one's neighbor and rubs against him. for one's needed warmth. Becoming sick and harboring suspicion, we are sinful to them. One proceeds carefully. A fool, whoever still stumbles over stones or human beings, a little poison now and then that makes for agreeable dreams. For such poison in the end, for an agreeable death. One still works for work in a form of entertainment, but one is careful lest the entertainment be too harrowing. For no longer becomes poor or rich, both require too much exertion. One still wants to rule, who obey. Both require too much exertion. No shepherd in one herd. Everybody wants the same. Everybody is the same. Again, these leftists, this is SJW business that he's shitting on. Whoever feels different goes voluntarily to the madhouse. Formerly all the world was mad, says the most refined, and they blink. This is like a meme waiting to happen, right? Like a picture of the blink, blink, blink. One is clever and knows everything that has ever happened. So there is no end or derision. One still quarrels, but one is soon reconciled, else it may spoil the digestion. One has one little pleasure for the day and one's little pleasure for the night, but one has regard for health. We have invented happiness, says the last man, and they blink. Here ended Zarathustra's first speech, which is also called the prologue. For at this point, he says that it's ended, but it hasn't. It still goes on for quite some time. For at this point, he was interrupted by the clamor and delight. Oh, well, okay, I'm just going to end here. We're just going to end right here. Hold on, let me make a note in my book. We'll do it again next week. Last men, and they blink. Oh, sorry. Alright, I think this is going to be fun. And, we'll see what happens. What do I have to do here? What do I got to do? I got to get used to running this digital board, is what I got to do. Oh, I think this is it.
Learn more at theabracast.com.
Nope, that's not it. That's it.
It is an apprentice in the order of the Abracast who now wishes to receive more light by passing to the degree of the fellow craft. He is prepared, worthy, and well qualified, and he is vouched for. Let him enter in the name of the Lord and be received in due form.
Hey, John here. Hey, way before the invention of yoga pants, can we just take a second here to ask God to bless the eternal soul of that motherfucker who invented yoga pants? And the motherfucker who marketed yoga pants. May they be blessed by the master of the ages upon the ages, amen, and all of that stuff. And if you're not praising these men or women, whoever did this, you've never been hungover at 6 o'clock in the morning on a treadmill at LA Fitness. I mean, holy shit, like that whole workout, the whole yoga space has those that whole glass wall. I mean, you'll stay on that fucking treadmill for the whole class.
what was I saying? Oh yeah. Before in the ancient times, before there were yoga pants, yoga wasn't just a hip way to kind of stay in fit. It was a serious, and I've actually tried this while I was recording these 4 episodes. This is a very uncomfortable practice of ways to expand your mind and train you to meditate. So let's get into Crowley's magnum opus, Liber 4, with 4 exclusive episodes, all on the first section of Liber 4, or Liber ABA. This is 194 minutes. That's like over 3 hours and 15 minutes of content exclusively on subscribestar.com/Abercast. All this and many more exclusive episodes are available on the Fellow Craft tier. The Fellow Craft tier just means it's only $3. It's $3 a month, dude. And you get tons of other stuff. So, like I said, that's subscribestar.com/Abercast. Check out this preview. If you were to ask your man of science for this theory of the real, he would tell you that there is ether which cannot be perceived in any way by any of these senses or detected by any instruments, and which possesses a quality which are, to use ordinary language, impossible. Is very much more real than the chair he is sitting on. The chair is only one fact in its existence, is testified by one very fallible person. The ether is the necessary deduction from a millions of facts, which have been verified again and again and checked at every possible test of truth. There is therefore no a priori reason for rejecting anything on the ground that it is not directly perceived by the senses. To turn another point, one of our tests of truth is the vividness of the impression. An isolated event in the past of no greater importance may be forgotten, and if it be in some way recalled, one may find oneself asking, did I even dream that? Or did it really happen? What can never be forgotten is the catastrophic, the first death among the people that one loves, for example, who would never be forgotten. For the first time, no one would realize that one had perceived, merely known. Such an experience sometimes drives people insane. Men of science has been known to commit suicide when their pet theory has been shattered. Oh boy, we're gonna do a Climate Gate episode at some point in time. This problem has been discussed freely in science and Buddhism. Which you could find in Crowley, the collected works. Time, the Camel, and other papers. This much only need we say in this place, that Diana has to be classed as the most vivid and catastrophic of all experiences. This will be confirmed by anyone who has been there. It is then difficult to overrate the value of such an experience has for the individual, especially as it is entire conception of things, including his most deep-seated conception, that's standard to which has always referred everything, his own self, that has to overthrow. And when we try to explain it away as a hallucination, to temporary suspension of the faculties or something similar, we find ourselves unable to do so. You cannot argue with a flash of lightning that has knocked you down. Any mere theory is easy to upset. One can find flaws in the reasoning process. One can assume that premises are in some ways false. But in this case, if one attacks the evidence for Diana, the mind is staggered by the fact that all other experience attacked at the same lines will fail much more easily. In whatever way we examine it, the results will always be the same. Diana will be false, but if so, so is everything else. If so, so is everything else. Now the mind refuses to rest in a belief of unreality of its own experience. It may not be what it seems, but it may be something. And if ordinary life is something, how much more just that be by whose light ordinary life seems nothing? Ordinary man sees the falsity and disconnectedness and purposelessness of dreams. He ascribes them to a disordered mind. The philosopher looks upon waking life with similar contempt, and the person who has experienced dhyana takes the same view, but not by mere pale intellectual conviction. Reasons, however, cognate never convince utterly, but this man in dhyana has the same commonplace certainty that a man has on waking from a nightmare. I wasn't falling down 1,000 flights of stairs. It was just a bad dream. Similarly comes the reflection of the man who has experience of dhyana. I am not that wretched insect, that imperceptible parasite of earth. It was only a bad dream. And as you could not convince the normal man that his nightmare was more real than his awakening, so you cannot convince the other that his dhyana was a hallucination, even though he is only too well aware that he has fallen from that state into normal life. It is probably rare for a single experience to upset thus radically the whole conception of the universe. Just as sometimes the first moment of waking, there remains a half doubt as to whether dream or waking is real. But as one gains further experience, when dhyana is no longer in shock, then the student has had plenty of time to make himself at home in the new world. This conviction will become absolute. Another rationalist consideration is this. The student has not been trying to excite the mind, but to calm it. Not to produce any one thought, but to exclude all thoughts, for there is no connection between the object of meditation and the dhyana. Why must we suppose a breaking down of the whole process, especially as the mind bears no subsequent traces of any interference, such as pain or fatigue? Surely this once, if never again, the Hindu image expressed in the simplest theory. The image is that of a lake unto which 5 glaciers move. These glaciers are senses, while the ice is breaking off constantly into the lake. The waters are troubled. If the glaciers are stopped, the surface becomes calm. But then, and only then, can it reflect unbroken the disk of the sun. The sun is the soul or God. We should, however, avoid these terms for the present on the account of their implications. Let us rather speak of the sun as some unknown thing whose presence has been masked by all things known and by the knower.
Learn more at theabracast.com. Get graphic elements, notes, worksheets, and text versions of selected episodes, as well as access to the private Abracast workgroup by signing into the mailing list. Get all that, plus exclusive episodes, by supporting the show and becoming a subscriber at subscribestar.com.